listen-only mode.
Namaskara. Today is Budhavasaraha. This is the Vimshati Tamaha Dinankaha, 20th Sama Saprakaranam, actually Samahara Dvandva Prakaranam Adya Bhavishyati, Adya Patishyate. Mangalacharanam Ramo Rajamanis Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Vihata Nishacharachamu Ramaya Tasmai Namaha Rama Nasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasosmyaham Rame Chittalaya Sada Bhautame Bho Rama Mamuddhara Rama Rameti Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane Shri Rama Nama Varanana On Nama Iti Ukta Maheshwara Sutrani A I Un Zul Rak E Ong I Ouch Hayavarat Lan Nama Na Nam Javain Gadadash Jaba Gadadash Kapha Cha Cha Tha Cha Cha Tav Kapai Sha Sha Sal Hal Iti Maheshwara Sutrani. Okay. So last time we had a lot of fun with the Purnipataha. So we finished up this number 182. We are on page 120. So on page 120, now we've taken the point 183. So let me warn you ahead of time. This looks a very simple situation, but actually it's very complex. This prakaranam about the Samahara Dvandva. The section of rules from which I mentioned to you in a couple of classes now, we're finally getting to it, which is 242, Dvandvascha Prani Turya Senanganam. From there up to 2416, Vibhasha Samipe. This is today's topic. And then Sanapumsakam. We already saw this before, that this Samahara will be Napumsakam. Now I said this is a complex topic. I want to try to do as good a job as I can, Yatha Shakti, Patishyami. But, keep in mind that this is really there are a lot of, apavadas and apavadas to apavadas, and it just becomes like that. But the very start of the topic is, remember the four meanings of the cha which we saw, I think immediate last class. And there we already seen that, two of them qualified for the samarthyam. We can make a compound. The two meanings were itaretara yogaha and samaharaha. So at the starting of point, every dvandva samasaha, unless something else is said, can be done in two ways. Itaretara yogaha, where the avayavaha, the components of samasaha, they maintain their individuality. That's the itaretara yogaha. Ramascha Lakshmanascha Rama Lakshmanao Gacchataha. Then Samaharaha is where it's also Dvandva Samasaha, where the group is more important than the individual. So that becomes the group, the Sanya Paribhasham. So this being the case now, when we have the ability to make Samahara Dvandva or Samahararthe, Itaretara Yogaha. Now, why do we need these rules then from 242 to 2416? What this is saying is that ekavachanam dvandvascha. So this dvandva, which is a prani turya senanganam and so on and so forth. So pranyanganam, which means that with limbs of a living being, or turyanganam, turya musical instruments. Actually, in this case, it means those who play the instruments. So when there are groups of those, like groups of a band, and then Senangana means members of an army. That dvandva is ekavachanam. Now, why do we need this? Because we already know that a dvandva can be made both ways. Before I go on, let me just give you, let me just start the class with the paribhasha. I don't like to start with paribhasha, but how do we know that, every compound, unless something else is said, can go samahara, can be made from it? And there is actually a paribhasha for this. Paribhasha number, when you say paribhashas, we think about the Paribhasha Indushekaraha of Nagesha Bhatta. That is the authority of paribhasha. There are many paribhasha sangrahaha. There are many different, paribhasha is not like Ashtadhyayi. Paribhashas have to be inferred from what Panini is saying. They are basically rules of the game. How to run Panini, it's like manual. It's like an operations manual for the Ashtadhyayi, for the paribhashas. How to interpret Panini statements and make some inferences, from that. So the paribhasha in the Shekharaha, that is the authority for the, in fact, if you look at the Ramlal Kapoor Trust edition of the Kashika, when they give paribhasha numbers, they are the numbers from the paribhasha in the Shekharaha. This is one of Nagesha's many great texts. So it's paribhasha in the Shekharaha. So in that one, Paribhashendu Indu Shekharaha. So by Nagesha. So this is where you want to, so when somebody talks about a paribhasha, he's talking about this one. It's a very nice book by Abhyankar with the entire paribhasha and the Shekhara. It's only a small book. There are only about 100 odd paribhashas. So it's a small book. Also, a good English translation of that is there, both published in this Pune, the Bhandarak Institute in Pune. Anyway, so there is a paribhasha number 34. Otherwise, you wonder where these numbers are coming from. The numbers are coming from the paribhasha in the Shekhara. Also, the number of commentaries on that. I think Chokamba also has a good book with number of commentaries on that. Paribhasha, where the PhD spend their time trying to figure out, what is the subtle meaning of Panini Sutras. But today we'll keep it simple for us. And paribhasha number 34, that paribhasha is saying that, I'll put here, Sarvo Dvandvaha Vibhashaikavad Bhavati. So Sarvo Dvandvaha means every Dvandva Samasaha, Sarvo Dvandvaha, Dvandvaha, Sarvo Dvandvaha, Dvandvo I should make it, Vibhashaikavad Bhavati, Vibhashaikavad Bhavati, which means then how do you figure this out? When you put a paribhasha like this, there should be some basis, some nyapakam, somewhere Panini, because paribhasha simulam, Panini hai vachanam eva. Yes, there must be something which Panini is saying which is inferring that. Okay, where inferring from that is that, I know this is kind of a side topic, but this is important because this is our basis for starting today's discussion, is there is a sutram which doesn't concern us today, but there is sutram 1263, this 1263, let's look at 1263 just briefly. This is not today's topic, but that's going to give us a nyapaka as to how Panini suggests that in general a compound can also go ekavat. So, prapti dvivachanam vidhiyate. Tishya, 1 second, yeah. Tishya punarvasor nakshatra dvandve bahuvachanasya. That's 1263. In fact, let's just keep it simple. I'll give you the English meaning of it very quickly because that's not, we don't want to go into too much details there. So 1263, in the Dvandva compounds of the stars Tishya and Punarvasu, the dual constantly comes in place of the plural. Now, why does Panini have to say Bahuvachanasya? Because Tishya is 1 star and Punarvasu are 2 stars. When you make Itaretara Yogaha, it will become the Bahuvachanam automatically. Then what does Panini mean by saying Bahuvachanasya? Only when it is so. So this will take, so this sutram is saying that the dual constantly comes in place of the plural. So that means that there must be a compound that can be made with Tishya and Punarvasu, which is not plural. If Tishya is 1, Punarvasu is 2, then how can we have a non-plural? It can only be when we have Ekavat. when you have samahara. So now there is no real rule. It's telling us that, tishya and punarvasu can be made into samahara. So this is a nyapaka. If Panini putting bahuvachanasya in 1 to 63, which is, already praptam, there's no need to put bahuvachanam. So that means that Panini feels that there must be a dvandva compound where we don't have bahuvachanam. Let me read you from the from Nagesha's, this Paribhashan Shekharaha. It's straightforward. So charte dvandvaha iti sutrena samahara itaretara yogayor avisheshena dvandva vidhanat nyaya siddhayam. So this paribhasha is because when Pani says charte dvandvaha, of course we did that 229, samahara itara yogayor avisheshena dvandva vidhanat. So I mean, Pani did not say this can be done only itara yoga, only in samahara. Then he says, so from that sutram alone we can understand that a dvandva compound can go in either of these meanings. Nyaya siddha iyam paribhasha. Then he says, tishya punarvasvoho 1 to 63 iti sutrastham bahuvachanasya iti grahanam asyaha nyapakam. So this bahuvachanasya is a nyapakam. Tadhi idam tishya punarvasu ityatra tadvyavrityartham. That means there must be a compound which we can form. Tishya punarvasu, make a samahar dvandva is allowed to be formed, which Pani does not want to come under this rule 1 to 63. One more time, there is no sutram as such which tells us specifically that we are able to form this compound tishya punarvasu as a samahara. So we only have charte dvandvaha. So the fact that Panini has put the bahuvachanasya, that becomes a nyapakam, that Panini feels that the samahara is possible in this case, and there is no real rule specifically which tells us it's possible. That means that in general, we can conclude that sarvo dvandvo vibhasha ekavad, vibhasha means vibhasha ekavad bhavati. So now this is a situation that we have any dvandva compound can go itaretara yogaha, can go samahare. So now the question comes, which I was talking about, is why do we? So I'll put here the nyapakam for this is. Let me just put in the document. Nyapakam for this. We should do a good job of recording these, because in the Saturday class I'm hoping to use these recordings. We have to double record again at that time also. I'm thinking that way. Iti madhyam chintanam. So anyway, nyapakam is the mention of bahuvachanasya, in 1 to 63. Okay. Now the question comes in, why do we need all these rules which we're going to talk about today? You're telling us that you can form a samahara compound in these cases. So asya prakaranasya prayojanam kyun tarhi? Yadi sarvo dvandvaha ekavad bhavati, vivasha ekavad bhavati, tarhi etesham sutranam kim prayojanam? What's the use of these? Okay. I think best thing we can do today is try to follow the Laghu Siddhanta, the Siddhanta Kaumudi. Unfortunately, in the Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi, only one sutram is given for Prakaranam. It's given only one, which is this 242. This is the only sutram given in Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. Unfortunately, Bhaimi Vyakhya also doesn't go into too much details beyond that. In our book, he has referred to about, let's see, 242, 247, 248, 249, 246, 2413, 2412. He's given quite a lot more than Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. But even beyond these, there are some complications that we need to know. Otherwise, the Prakaran doesn't make sense. Like the first question that we raise right now is, why do we even need any of these? Let's start with Kaumudi and see what Bhattoji says, how he takes us through that. And that way, I don't want to make any errors because it's a complicated topic. You'll see why it's complicated now in a second. Now, let us remind us of the Actually, this is also like a paribhasha, which is siddhe sati arambha niyamartha athva niyamartham. So siddhe sati arambha. If something is already been accomplished, still some sutra being put for that, then it is niyamartham. It's a restrictive rule. Quick example for you, which we all know, is the sanyogantasya lopaha. Sanyogantasya lopaha 8 to I think 23. Sanyogantasya lopaha 8 to 23 in ratsasya, which all of you have know is that when sanyogantasya lopaha, of course, alontyasya means when you have the sanyogantam padam, the ending al takes lopaha. Next sutram says ratsasya. Why do we need ratsasya? For siddhe sati arambha niyamartham. That following a repha, only sakara will go. Others will not go. Because ratsasya was not necessary. The prior sutram sanyogantasya lokaha could have taken care of the operation. The operation of removing the ending letter was already taken care of by sanyogantasya lopaha. So then saying ratsasya actually is a restrictive rule. It restricts the domain of 8 to 23, which is that following a repha, if it's a sanyoganta padam, then any letter should have taken lopa after that. Should be any letter. But this says sakara takes lopaha, which means that other letters except sakara will not take lopaha at the end of a padam if the prior letter is a repha. So 8 to 24 restricts 8 to 23. Very important concept. Very important concept. Now, how do we relate to today's lesson? Is that we already saw that any dvandva compound can optionally go either way, itara yokaha, or it can go in the samaharaha. Now, Panini is putting all these rules over here, saying that in these cases, you can form a samahara compound. So, must be the same thing then. Siddhe sati arambha niyamatram. Which means that in these cases, only samahara dvandva can be formed. You cannot do itara yogaha. That's what it means. Okay, let's follow the Kaumudi now. Says first sutram here, dvandvascha prani turya senangana. And unfortunately, don't have an online Siddhanta Kaumudi. So that's one thing we are lacking in these classes is the online Siddhanta Kaumudi. We have a Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. Don't have the online, because that's our basic text is the Kaumudi, and we don't have it online. So hopefully we'll be able to type it slowly and get it online. Anyway, dvandvascha prani. Actually, you know what? I think we do have the samasa prakranam. Maybe I should bring it next class. Anyway, but today we'll read it from the book. So dvandvascha prani turya senangana. So esham dvandvaha ekavat syat. Esham dvandvaha ekavat syat. In fact, we can go to the Kashika. We can go to the Kashika and see what Kashika says. Okay, let me do that. Let me see Kashika. Okay, let's go to 242 in Kashika and start from there. 242. Okay, that ekavachanam iti vartate. From the prior sutram comes ekavachanam. Anga shabdasya pratyekam vakya parisamatya trini vakyani sampadyante. Actually, this is what we have is that you have a dvandva garbha tatpurusha compound. This may not make sense to you right now. So what it is that we first form the compound, prani cha turyan cha sena cha prani turya senaha. Yen tasamangani prani turya sena senangani. So they are the limbs or parts of a prani, of a living being, or they are parts of a musical band, basically, and then senangana, or parts of an army. So anga shabdasya pratyekam vakya parisamatya means angam applies to each one of these, the prani, turya, and sena. Trini vakyani sampadyanti. There are three sentences here, which means as follows. Pranyanganam dvandve ekavad bhavati. Dvandvaha ekavad bhavati. Tatha turyanganam senanganam cha dvandvaha ekavad bhavati. So if you're talking about and let's take an example quickly. Pranyanganam tavat. So first of all, Pranyanganam udaharanam Panipadam. So Pani cha Padau cha Panipadam. Then become Panipadaha. So Panipadam. By the way, let's also not forget last time's wonderful class where we are talking about which takes the Purnipataha. So Pani cha Padau cha. So here start with, let's go quickly for 2 minutes. In all of these examples, keep an eye on what we had in last class. In fact, the rest of your life, anytime you Dvandva Samasaha, it doesn't matter if it's Samahare va atva itaratra yoge va. Sarvatra Purnipata Vichara Kartavyaha. Purnipata Vicharaha. All we have to think Purnipata. What will go first, what will go second? As we discussed last time, our favorite rule, which is the Upasajanam Purvam, cannot help us in Dvandva compounds because they all have Upasajana Sanya. So Dvandveghi. Dvandveghi. Pani cha Padro cha. The Pani has the Ghi Sanya, Shesho, Ghi Sakhi. So the Pani will go first. And the Pado, nothing else will really help us because we don't have Ajad Yadantam, we don't have Alpashtaram, so nothing is going to help. The Pani and Pada both have one Guru in the beginning, one Lagu in the end. So unfortunately, so Dvandveghi. We won't do like every example today, but for your homework, always keep on referring to these. Dvandveghi, Ajad Yadantam, Alpashtaram, with the many, Vatikani on that, Alpashtaram, and Rajadandad Shiparam also available to us. So always keep this in mind. Any Dvandva Samaha. Okay. So Pranyanganam Panipadam. So Panipadam. So Pani cha Padau cha Esham Samaharaha Panipadam. So we can put this here. So these are limbs of a living being, of a body of a living being. So we can Pani cha Padau cha Panipadam. So Pani cha Padau cha Panipadam. So let's do one the long way. Laukika Vigraha. Laukika Vigraha means in regular parlance we'll make it Pani cha Padau cha equals Panipadam. So Panipadam. Okay. And then if you want to do the Alaukika Vigraha, the technical breakdown, become Pani plus Au, Pani Au, and then we have Pada Au. Pada equals 2 hands, 2 legs, Pada Au. Also equals Panipadam. Now we have to then, we can take Pani Au, Pada Au. Of course, we get the usual Kritanta Samasa, Pradipadika Sanya, Supo Dhatu Pradipadika Yoho. The Au and the Au will drop. We'll get Panipada. So now we get Panipada as the Pratipadikam is Panipada. And this is, we have used our favorite rules. Kritadita Samasa, just support the Pratipadikayoho. Then we have to, we have also used the, it become Samahara is by its definition, it's a single, it is Ekavachanam. So we get Ekavachanam, and we also use the Sanapumsakam. So we're going to get Napumsakam. So it's going to become a singular neuter because Sanapumsakam at the end of the section, Sanapumsakam becomes, so it's Sanapumsakam from 2.4.17, and also it will become Ekavachanam from 2.4.2. So then we can only bring in the neuter, and bring in the Su. So Panipada plus Su. Plus Su, and we have used 2.4.2, 2.4.17, and of course we have used the Swaujas, etc. And then we get Samona Punsakat, Saptaha, the Samona Punsakat Luxyat, and then Atoam Amipurvaha. Atoam Atipurvaha. Just like Vanam becomes Panipadam. So we have to use the Ato Amipurvaha. So Atom will be around 7.1.24. Ato Amipurva 6.1.107. So this is how it is formed. Okay. So these are, the formation is nothing difficult about it. So 7.1.24 and Amipurvaha. 61107. 1107. Okay. Now, this is one example. The Sutram also said that Turyanganam. Turyanganam. So even the Turya means actually musical instruments. What could be an example of that? In fact, here also Nagesha clearly says, when I say Nagesha, I'm talking about the Shabdendu Shekhara. Shabdendu Shekhara is a commentary on the Siddhanta Kaumudi. There are two versions of it, Laghu Shabdendu Shekhara and Bruhat Shabdendu Shekhara. I'm looking right now at the Bruhat Shabdendu Shekhara. In the Sutram, I think he comments on this. I'll read out to you. Okay. Pranyanganam. Okay. He mentioned that this refers to the ones who are playing the instruments, not the instrument itself. Atra Turyanga Shabdena Vadakaha eva Grijante iti Alpashtaram iti Sutrastha Bhashya Swarasaha. So in the Bhashyam on the Sutram Alpashtaram, Patanjali expresses the opinion that this Turyanga Shabdena Vadakaha eva Grijante. So these means they stand for the ones who play the instruments. So then an example for that is that, when we take the Mardangikascha Vainavikascha Esham Samaharaha. Actually here I can put Esham Samaharaha just to make sure that we're talking about Samahara only here. So Esham Samaharaha. So Esham Samaharaha. 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 Okay. So we can take another example now. So we can take Mardangikascha. So let me put it down here. So make it Mardangikascha Vainavikascha. So Mridanga, those who play the Mridanga is a Mardanga. This is just a Dita form from Mridanga. So Mardangikaha, Mardangikaha. So Mardangikascha, and then Vainavikascha. You play the Venu. So Vainavikascha, Vainavikaha. So we get Esham Samaharaha, and that gives us the final form. We get the Mardanga Vainavakam. Esham Samahara, Mardangika Vainavikam. Mardangika Vainavikam. Mardangika Vainavikam. So Mardangika Vainavikam. Vainavikam. Okay. Now just some background details. So this again use the same process. Basically 242 has been used. It was 2417. The same steps as above. Nothing very special. In this case we'll have the pratyaya just and just. Otherwise the same steps. Now this word Mardangika is in fact it's in the Yadyapi Mridanga Vainava Shabdau Vadya Visheshaparao Tathapi Yaha Tad Vadane Vartete. Mridanga Vadanam Shilpam Yasya iti Asya iti Thak Pratyaha Thasya Ikadeshe Adi Vruddhau Bhasyakarasya Lope Mardangika Shabdaha. From Mridanga comes Mardangika. Basically, no need to go in all the details today, is that from Mridanga comes Mardangika. The one who plays the Mridanga is a Mardangikaha. So Mardangikaha, Mridanga Vadakaha. And then the other one is so first you take Venu. So Venor Vikaraha Vainavam. So the Vainava itself is a double Taditana. So Veno Vikaraha Vainakam, and then Vainava Vadanam Shilpam Mascheti Vainavikaha. So from Venu you get Vainava, from Vainava get Vainavika as one who plays the Vainava. Anyway, those details no one to put on the notes today because that's not today's topic. The bottom line is from the Vyakshyanam we know that here in the Turyanganam we're talking about the ones who play the instruments. You take the instrument, you form Tadita from it, one who plays it, and then that when compounded you can make a samahara out of it. Like in this case, Mardangika Vainavikam. What does Kaumudi give? Let's see what Kaumudi gives. Same. He gives Mardangika Panavikam. So Panava. So Panava. I think Panava comes in Gita, chapter 1. Panavanaka Gomukha. Yes, it comes in Gita. Panavanaka Gomukha. Sahasaivabyahanyanta. Sashabdastumulo bhavata. So Panava. Good to just refer to Gita for 1 second over here. Chatashankhaschya bhejascha. Panavanaka Gomukha. Sahasaivabyahanyanta. Here it is. Panava. So Panava is an instrument. Then Panavika is one who plays the instrument. And the common example is that Mardangika Panavikam. Okay. Then the next one he gives Rathika Ashwaroham. So he gives Rathikascha Ashwarohascha Yesham Samaharaha. So Rathika is one who rides a chariot. Also Taditaham Ratha. From Ratha you get the Rathika. And then from that you get, you compound that with the Ashwaroha, means one who is riding on a horse. So these are of course the elements of an army. So we'll make it Rathikascha, then Ashwarohascha, Ashwarohaha, Rohacha, and we get and then the usual Yesham Samaharaha, and we finally get the form Rathika, Kashwaroham, Ashwaroham. Same thing, 2, 4, 2, etc. Rathikascha, Ashwarohascha, Yesham Samahara, Ashwaroham. Okay, so now we got these 3 cases. Summarizing again, that if we have the limbs of a body of a living being, or of those who play musical instruments, or those that are parts of an army, then we can form a Samahara Dvandvaha. Now the question was, let's follow Kaumudi. What he says is that Samaharasya Ekavatvad Ekatve Siddhe, which means that Samahara can be formed, and then Samahara also means the group only. So Ekatve Siddhe, when Ekvachan already Siddham, Niyamartham Prakaranam, which means that, and this is the punchline now, this Pranyanga Dinam Samahara Eva Yatha Syat. So basically now it means that if you have a Dvandva compound, it involves limbs of a body, or it involves people playing musical instruments, or if it involves parts of an army, then you have to form Samahara. So Pranyanga Dinamadi, so this is the Niyame Sati, Siddhe Sati Arambha, Niyamarthaha. So Pranyangadinam Samahara Eva. So that is what we get from this Prakaranam. In this Prakaranam, all these sutras, which is Pranyanga Dinam Samahara Eva. So this is what we have to understand, because we saw from Charte Dvandvaha, Samahara can be formed optionally with every compound. Samahara means already Ekvachanam Siddham. So Siddhe Sati Arambha Niyamasa. So these rules are now going to tell us that these cases we can only form a Samahara Dvandvaha. We cannot form the other. Now, just to give you a heads up, after we're going to have a Vibhasha coming here. Now the question we're going to, this is probably the most difficult sutra for today, is the Vibhasha Sutra. It's 2, 4, 12. Obvious question again should come to our mind is that, why do we need this sutra? Vibhasha Prapta Eva. Because we already have Vibhasha, that every compound, every Dvandva compound can go 2 ways. then why do we need vibhasha? So we'll see why we need that, because the sutram were not there. Then maybe some of these may have taken nitya samahara, maybe nityam. Some of them may not have taken. There might be some other condition. That's why Pani put this vibhasha. And then also will come na. This samahara is not to be done. Just to give a breakdown of this, is these rules from 242 which we just saw from here up to this one, gavasha prabhuti nicha. So they are saying niyamartham. Means in all these cases, only samahara. Samahara can be done, means only samahara can be done. Dvandva cannot be done. That is from 242 to 2411. Then 2412 and 2413 say that samahara may be done optionally. And then 2414, 15, they are telling us that samahara cannot be done. And finally, one more vibhasha comes in 2416, put back the optionality, 2416. One more time. So 242 to 2411 is siddhe sati arambha niyamartham. So this is that one. And then comes the vibhasha 2412, 2413. Then comes nishedha. So the samahara cannot be done in these situations. Finally, another vibhasha comes at the end, and then that's the end of the Satammusakam. So we see, let's look at Kashika also give the same meaning. Let's look at what Kashika says on this one. He says, okay, says Pranyanganam tavat panipadam shiro grivam. So shiraha cha griva cha shiro grivam. So shiro grivam. What's happening here is that we got the rasva at the end. Rasva at the end. Because when you have napumusakam pratipadikam, we saw in the previous class that rasva napumusake pratipadikasya. Rasva napumusake pratipadikasya. So that when you have, so when it says shiraha cha griva cha shiro grivam. So 1, 2, 4, let me put this one more here. Kashika example under the Pranayangana example, which is okay, shiraha cha griva cha and then esham samaharaha will give shiro grivam. Comes in Gita, tamam kaya shiro grivam. In fact, good example this one is, okay, we'll go to Gita shloka in a second. Let me just put this here. It becomes shiro and becomes grivam rasva. So there we have used 1, 2, 47. Rasso napumsake pratipadikasya. Comes in Gita. Tamam kaya shiro grivam dharayan nachalam sthiraha samprekshanashikagam samdishashchanavalokayan prashantatma vigatabhi. So chapter 6, I think around 20, let's see, tam vidya dukkha sanyogam Shanti Nirvana Parama. Okay, Samam Kaya Shiro Grivam. So this Kaya Shiro Grivam. Samahar Dvandvaha. Samam Kaya Shiro Grivam. Dharayan Nachalam Stiraha. Samprekshan Asikagram Sam Nishashchanavalokayan. So this is a Samahar Dvandva, Kaya Shiro Grivam in Gita 6.13. 6.13 in Gita. Samam Kaya Shiro Grivam. So let me put Gita example in Gita 6.13. Gita 6.13. Okay, let's continue with what Kashika says now. This Kashika. So I know we're going to be a little bit slow, but this is going to soon get complicated. Okay, so we already have 1 or 2 complications. It's going to get more complicated as we go along. So let's take it step by step. Now, Turyanganam Mardangika Panavikam. So Veena Vadaka Parivadakam. Again, two musicians. Then Senanganam Rathika Ashwaroham Yathika Padatam. Then Hastya Shvadishu. Now here comes one complication now. Here comes the complication. Hastya Shvadishu. Now Hastya and Ashwa means these are elephant and horse. Now these are going to be, these can be parts of an army. These can be parts of an army. Now, by the way, let's look at the word, the prior one, Padataha. Padata. Yeah, so Padata is, okay, foot soldier. Okay, so Padata is foot soldier. So going back to this, the Kashika example which he gave. So Ratika Padatam. So Ratikascha Padatascha Ratika Padatam. Now then he says Hastyashvadishu Paratvat Pashu Dvandve Vibhashaya Ekavad Bhavati. And what's he saying now? If you take like a Hastinascha, Ashvascha Hastinascha. Now can be, they are parts of an army. They are parts of an army. So then we should have only had, a samahara only with that. What is the vibhasha coming now? The vibhasha coming in later on in that. So let's jump to that sutram. This is going to be the most difficult sutram for today. But let's just get a taste of it right now. So what this sutram is saying is 2, 4, 12. Vibhasha, vriksha, mruga, truna, dhanya, vyanjana, pashu. Pashu is important for that. Pashu. Then shakuni, shakunya, ashva, vadava, purvaparadharottaranam. One more time. Vibhasha means that they can be compiled optionally. So vriksha, mruga, truna, dhanya, vyanjana, pashu, shakuni, shakunya, ashva, vadava, purvaparadharottaranam. So we have these we have vriksha, which is 1, vriksha, mruga, 1, 2, 3, truna, dhanya 4, vyanjana 5, pashu 6, shakuni 7. So when these are go into when trees, vriksha, when trees go into a dvandva samasaha, then you can form a samahara optionally. Same thing, mruga, truna, dhanya, vyanjana, like in a vyanjana, like dadhi, ghritam. Vyanjana is some side item in the meal, something which are side items in the meal is vyanjanam, which bring out the taste of the meal. Vyanjana can also be meaning like consonants. So consonants bring out the taste of the swaras. Vyanjana which adds taste. Then pashu, shakuni. Why is pashu mentioned here now? Because if you have, like if you take hasti and ashwa, then in that case, we by our present rule 242, it's a sena angani. Then you should have only had, the samahara. But now it says pashugrahanam hastyasvadisho senangatvat nitya prapte vikalpanatham. So when we have the pashugrahanam, so now we see this complication started to come now, is in 2.4.12, Panini says vibhasha. Now on face value we don't need the sutram at all, because as we just saw, every dvandva can go samahara, can go itaretara yogaha. Now why it says pashu over here? Because now pashugrahanam vyartham va, no, it's not vyartham. Because if Panini did not say vibhasha for pashu, then if you had ashwa and hasti going into compound, we have had only this samahara by 242. So, but here we will now have two compounds. We will have a samahara compound. We'll also have the dvandva compound. So let me see. I can give you a good example here. Siddham Pashugrahanamiti Vikalpanartham. Vikalpanartham. This is for making a vikalpaha. Vikalpaha. If you have a senang which is hasti and ashwa, for example, then we cannot make the we can make samahara only optionally. So that is what it says. In fact, some of these are good examples here given today I was reading a lot of books today because this thing is very complicated prakaranam. So I was reading a lot of books. I looked at also the Bala Manurama, which normally I don't look at so much. I was giving it today because Bala Manurama gives a lot of details. There's lot of details. So let's see what he gives on this one. Pashugrahanam hastyashvadisho senangatvat nitya prapte vikalpanatham. So it says pashugrahanam vikalpanatham. So that's what it says. When you form, you can have two of them. you can have, the samahara dvandvaha. You can also have the itaratra dvandvaha. Samahara dvandvaha can also have the itaratra dvandvaha. Let's see if he gives an example of that. Prakshanyandrodha go mahisham. Okay. So now, in fact, I was looking at also the Nyasa, Padamanjari, and all of these books today. I spent a lot of time today trying to, because as I said, the Pashu Dvandvaha Ityeva Siddhe. So if you Samaharita Dvandvaha Syam Vachana Vahasagam Kim Pashu Grahane Naiva Mrugad. No, that's not the one, I'm sorry. 2.4.12, right? Okay. 2.4.12. Brahmana Agataha. Okay. All right. So basically, if you have animals which are part of an army, normally you would have had only Samahara Dvandvaha by 2.4.2, including Pashu in 2.4.12. You're going to get a Vikalpanartham, so 2.4.12. So I put that down in the document, and we'll move on. It says in 2.4.12, Pashu Grahanam Hastyashvadishu Senangatva Nitye Prapte Vikalpanartham. So even though we do have this sutram, which is talking about Senanganam Samaharaha, but by 2.4.12, in 2.4.12, we have the inclusion of Pashu in 2.4.12. In 2.4.12, Panini includes Pashu also. So Pashu. So now that which tells us that, which indicates that Pashu Grahanam Hastyashvadishu Senangatvat Nitya Prapte, Senangatvat Nitya Prapte, Vikalpanartham, Nitya Prapte, Vikalpanartham, Vikalpanartham. So let's do it one more time. If we start with that, any samahara, any dvandva can go samahara, itaratra yogaha. Now, by 2.4.2, Pani said that these, which have limbs of a body of an animal, or the musical, items, members of a band, or if they are parts of an army, then they can go samahara, which means they can go only samahara. Well, we don't need that. But now comes the complication in 2.4.12. Pani says if you have Pashu, animals going together, they can be called Vibhasha. So then that means that if you have Hasti, Ashwa, etc., they can go both ways. Even though they're part of an army, they were only allowed to go Samahara. Now they can go both ways because of the Vikalpanam in 2.4.12. Okay, so let's continue with Kashika. It says is that, on that one, Itaratra Yoga Samaharecha Dvandvo Vihitaha. Dvandva comes in these two meanings we talked in the beginning of the class. Tatra Samaharasya Ekatvat Siddham Eva Ekavachanam. So the Ekavachanam is Siddham Eva. So why does Panini have to say Ekavachanam? Idam tu Prakaranam Vishaya Vibhagartham. He wants to delineate the Vishayaha. Pranyangadinam Samahara Eva. Samahara Eva Dvandvaha. We can have Dvandva only Samahara. When he says Pranyanganam, we are talking about from 2.4.2 to 2.4.12. Pranyangadinam. 2.4.2 to 4.11. Sorry, 2.4.2 to 2.4.11. This is the Pranyangadinam, etc. Samahara eva dvandvaha. Then Dadipayadinam itaritara yoge eva. What he's talking about is that this one, Dadipayadi, which is coming down here, these two, itaritara yoge eva. Because it says don't do Samahara in these. That's 2.4.14.15. And then he says that then Vrikshamragadinam uvetra iti. while these vibhasha rules, vriksha, mriga, etc., is vibhasha. So that is what the way this entire section is. That as a basic point, we started from having a option to do in both. Then Panini says that in these from 242 to 2411, samahara should be done, which means that only samahara can be done. Itara yoga cannot be done. Then Panini gives a vibhasha. In these, vibhasha can be done. We'll go into details of that shortly. And then Panini says, don't do the samahara in those 2, 4, 14, 15. Okay, so which ones are important among these? Coming back to the book now, we have so far talked about only, let's see, in the book we have talked about, he starts with the members of a compound denoting limbs of a body. That's 242. So parts of an army. He didn't talk about the members of a band. He did give. Okay. Then next he talks rivers or countries of different genders. What is that one now? That one is the, so we talked 242 we got. Is 243, 244, 245 we can skip. So 243, 244, 245 we can skip. The reason why we can skip is that basically it's talking about some Vedic practices, Vedic yajnas, Vedic chanting. So these we don't apply to us right now. I'll give the meaning quickly. The English meaning of 2, 4. We're going to skip these. These 2, 4, 3, 4, 5 are very rarely used because talking about some yajnas in Yajurveda and things like that. So we don't need them. So we can go to the 2, 4, 6, which is very important. Anyway, let me read the meaning of 2, 4, 3, 4, 5 quickly. So 2, 4, 3 says that the Dvandva compound of words signifying persons belonging to different Vedic schools. But the sense is not that of repetition. It's singular. Anyway, it's talking some Vedic schools chanting, so we can skip that one. Then 2, 4, 4, the Dvandva compound of words denoting the sacrifice, kratu, ordered in the Yajurveda, Advaryu Veda, is singular. So that was Anuvade Charananam, Advaryu Kratu Napumsakam. So that is that one. And then the next one, which is 2, 4, 5, Adjayanato Aviprakrishta Kyanam, is a Dvandva compound of words denoting persons who have studied subjects which in order of study not remote from each other. Like in the Veda, you have the Pada Pataha, Krama Pataha, you're talking about those. So let's skip this 2, 4, 3, 4, 5. Unless you're talking about, Vedic chanting and Vedic sacrifices and, Veda Pata Kramaha, you won't apply to us. But now comes a very important sutra. This 2, 4, 6, extremely important sutra. Jatira Praninam. Jatira Praninam. Let's just follow what Kaumudi says. Jatira Praninam. And there, the first thing it says that Prani Varja Jati Vachinam Dvandvaha Ekavat. So Prani Varja Jati Vachinam. When you have a generic term, you're talking about not one specific item, not one named item, your generic item. And then that item, if it is not talking about praninam, not talking about living beings, then it should be done only in the samahara. Very important sutra, because generic items are many. What example does he give? Is dhana shashkuli. These are kind of like edible items. Dhana shashkuli. Dhana can be like grain, can be like popcorn. Dhana shashkuli. Shashkuli is also kind of like a fried, thing that we eat. So dhana shashkuli. Now when you talk about popcorn, now popcorn doesn't mean this particular popcorn you have in your hand. It's a generic term. It can mean, you can refer to any popcorn anywhere in the world. So this is a generic term, not talking about a particular kind of popcorn, a particular name of popcorn that you have, or not that just those corn which you have in your hand. Again, it's a jati, it's a class. So now, you use dhana and shashkuli. can only go in the samahar dvandvaha, dhana shashkuli. And then, but praninam tu which shudraha. So Vaishya and Shudra become which shudraha. So they will not become samahare. Again he says one more thing. He says dravya jati nam eva. It has to be physical items. Because when it says apraninam, apraninam is not a living being. So living beings are, physical items. So by that we understand that even the jati vachakas should be talking about the dravya jati nam eva. So they're substances, not like qualities or abstract items. So example he gives is that iha na rupa rasau, rupa and rasa. Rupa is form, rupam is form, rasa is of course taste. So they can say these are generic terms, but because of apraninam we understand these are also, this jati vachaka should also be dravya jati nam eva. So then rupa rasau, rupam cha rasascha rupa rasau, not rupa rasam. Also gives gamana kunchane. Gamanam is going, akunchanam can be like bending or curving. So because these are not physical items, these are actions, abstract. So gamanancha, akunchanancha, gamana kunchane. Gamana kunchane is the example that he gives. And one more he says, yes, is, I'm reading from Siddhanta Kaumudi now, is jati pradhanya eva ayam ekavad bhavaha dravya vishesha vivakshayam tu. Now, if you're referring to, let's say he gives examples of badaramalakani. So this badara is kind of like berries. How about that? English word berry. And badara. Badara means maybe the English word berry may come from that. Badara and berry. Anyway. So badara and berries in English. Badaramalakani. So amalaka is also a sour fruit. So if you have specific fruits in your hand or in a pot or something, then you're not talking about a jati anymore. You're talking about these specific ones that are in front of you in the vessel. In that case, you're not talking about a jati. You're talking about, this is so complicated, isn't it? But that's the way it is, And there's no other way out. We have to go through all these things. So only when it is talking about the jati, like berries in general, generally talking about berries and with other fruits, that kind of fruit, then it'll become badaramalakam. But if you're talking about the one specific berries which are in front of you in a pot or something, then you're not talking about jati anymore. You're talking about those specific berries. Then we'll go back to the dvandva. It can become badaramalakani. Let's see what Kashika says. This 2, 4, 6. Let's go to Kashika. And we'll go to the book also. Let's go to Kashika for a second. So 2, 4, 6 is a very important sutra. Very important sutra. Because the first one which you saw is not that, you talk about limbs of a body is important, but members of a music band and parts of an army is not that common. This one is very common. 2, 4, 6. 2, 4, 6 is jati vachinam shabdanam dvandvaha ekavad bhavati praninaha varjayatva. So excluding the living beings. Again, ara shastri. These are instruments that that we use, like a carpenter's instruments. Ara shastri. So ara shastri, let me see what the meaning in English I'll give you, because some of these words are now so foreign to us that we don't know the meanings. Jatira pranina. So ara shastri, let me see. I think it means like a chisel and something like that. Ara shastri is a meaning. It means an awl, A-W, an awl and a knife. Ara shastri. So that is the meaning. So these are instruments. So now you're not talking about a specific knife in your hand. You're talking about a knife in general. So now that becomes a jati. So that is, you see how all encompassing this thing is. So we have to be ready for this. So ara shastri. is one thing that he gives. And then, because you have jatis all the time. Jatis all the time, because anything like shastrika, let me see, shastri. That shastri is a knife. Shastrika is a knife. So ara shastri. Okay, so that is the one meaning. Now next, let's see what else he says in that. So ara shastri. Then he says dhana shashkuli, which we just talked about, like popcorn and some like fries. Dhana shashkuli. In jati itikyam nandaka panchajanyau. Nandaka and panchajanyau, these are two conches. Now they are not a jati. Nandaka is one specific conch, and also panchajanya, Sri Krishna's conch. All this come in Gita also. In Gita chapter 1, Panchajanyam Rishi Kesho. So Devasindhananjayaha. This comes in Gita. Panchajanyam Rishi Kesho Devasindhananjayaha. So these are specific conches now. These are not the ones which are general conch. He didn't say Shankham. He just said Shankham itself. Then that becomes a jati herb. But when you talk about a name of a conch, see Panchajanyam Rishi Kesho Devasindhananjayaha. So example, he says jati tikim. Why only is jati? Because Nandaka Panchajanyau, the two specific conches, not a class. Now, apraninam itikim Brahmana Kshatriya Vishudraha. These are living beings. So even though Brahmana is jati, because it can be any Brahmana, Kshatriya, same thing, but they are apraninam, so it will be apraninam. Now he says, Dravya jati nam ayam ekavad bhavaha. Na guna kriya jati nam. It should not be a jati of a quality or an action. Rupa rasa gandha sparshaha. Rupa rasa gandha sparshaha means that form and taste and smell and touch. They are not physical items, so they will not become ekavad. Then gamana kunchana prasaranani. So gamanam is going, kunchan like bending, prasaranam is I think just like spreading out, stretching. Prasaranani. Then jati paratvecha. Okay. Jati paratvecha jati shabdanam ayam ekavad bhava vidhiyate. So when you are talking, you should be referring to the entire jati, not to those some few items in the jati. So you can use the same word, like you use the word berries. You can talk about berries in general, or you can talk about specific berries that you have. If you talk specific berries which you have, then it is not a jati vachak anymore. Na niyata dravya vivakshayam. So if it's some specific items, then you cannot do it. So he says, Iha kunde, in this part, Iha kunde, badaramalakani tishtanti. So in this part, there are these berries and there are these other fruits, malakani. So summarizing now one more time, Jatira Praninam is a very important sutra. Whenever you have a generic term, generic item, physical item, a name, could be a class of trees, could be a class of eating things, could be anything. As long as it could be, as long as it is a, should be generic though, not one specific named item. In that case, only samahara can be found. So of all these rules, I would say 2, 4, 6 is very important. 2, 4, 6 is very important. So any jati vachak shabda, which is apraninam, of course. 2, 4, 6 examples. 2, 4, 6 is an important sutram. So mark this one, important sutram, because you can see. Anything jati generic terms are so many, because there are this has a very wide application. This is a wide application. Okay, so Kaumudi, we finished with that. Let me read one more time to you. It says that Prani Vajja Jati Vachinam Dvandvaha Ekavatta Dhana Shashkuli Praninam tu Vishudraha Dravya Jatinam Eva has to be a physical item. He says Na Iha Rupa Rasau Gamana Kunchane. So there will be Tritra Yoga, not Samahara, not physical items. Jati pradhanye eva ayam ekavad bhavaha. jati pradhanye, not specific there is. Dravya vishesha vivakshayam, talk about specific items. Then tu badaramalakani. Okay, I think that is covered in the book. So 246 is covered in the book. I'm sure it is covered in the book. Parts of an army. This is what it's talking about. How when members of a compound are this point number 2. Members of a compound are words denoting inanimate substances. Apranina. It has to be generic though. It has to be generic. So you add that to the book. In the book, point number 2, you add a condition. It has to be generic, not like the example given in Kashika, which is the Nandaka Panchajanyau. In that case, it will not be. So members of a compound, words denoting inanimate substances, apraninam, which we aprani jati vachakana. So yavashcha dhanyancha. So he gives barley and I think rice. So of course barley and rice are generic terms. You're not talking about a particular grain of rice that you're holding somewhere. So barley and rice is 2 generic items. So yavashcha dhanyancha yavadhanyam. By the way, notice the alpashtaram and the lagu aksharam purvam from last class. So we're not going into details today, but keep in your mind, at the back of your mind, always keep track of that, which we did in last class. Dhanyam has a guru. Dhanyam has a guru. Lagu aksharam purvam. Yava, both have 2. Both have only 2 ach. So alpashtaram won't help us. We don't have a ghi sanya here. We don't have ajadyadantam, but we do have dhanyam, which is a guru, and yava, which is laghu. So yava went first. So that's the vartikam, which is on the last class, on the last class, I think, so lagvaksharam puram. Keep in, we're not, since time is short, I'm not going through every example. But you should for homework, go through each one of these. Examples given in Kashika or Kaumudi, and then try to justify. See this one. Lagvaksharam puram nipatati. Kashakashau. Last time we did that. So yavadhanyam. So yava has dhanyam has a guru, so he will go second. Yava will go first. Yavadhanyam. So that was in the book, point number 2. Very important sutram. One more time. If you have any generic term referring to physical items, not living beings, then it has to go in Samaharam. This is a very wide class that we have to keep in mind. If you look at all these sutras today, the one which has the broadest application, I would say this one. Jatira Praninam. It is also, if you see, Jato Veka Vachanam. So to Jati, is also famous. So we say Jato Veka Vachanam. This is Eka Vachanam. Like even in English, you have some of this. You say like a man is a cruel animal. It's not one man. You say man means like human beings in general. Which a man is a cruel animal. That man is singular. He is Jato. Generic man became singular. Anyway, so Jatira Praninam is coming here. Now let's take the next one. Vishishtalingo Nadi Desho Gramaha. That's the point in the book which we just saw, which is that if you have rivers or countries of different genders, in the book, let's do the example. We forgot to do example in the book. It says Karnecha. I think there's typos here. This typos. It should be Karnecha Netrecha Karna Netram. This is a prior sutram 242 examples from this book. Karnecha Netrecha Karna Netram by 242. This is the Pranyanganam. We're talking about 242. This is 242. 242. Prani Turya Senanganam. So Karnecha Netrecha Karna Netram. Not Karna Netrani, but Karna Netram only. Ratikashcha Shvarohashcha Jakas. We did this one. Ratikashcha Arohashcha. Aroham means any riders, anybody who rides. Yatikascha, Arohascha, Yatikaroham. Then Ganga cha Shonascha, Ganga Shonam. Let's look at 247 now. Let's look at 247. What does 247 say? 247 is saying that Vishishtalingo Nadi Desho Gramaha. So Vishishtalinganam, there's some typos here, but Vishishtalinganam means Bhinnalinganam, different genders. Nadi Vachinam, Shabdanam, Deshavachinam cha, Grama Vajjitanam, should not be the village, name of a village. Grama Vajjitanam, Dvandvaha, Ekavad Bhavati. So, na dvandvo nadi uchyate. Desha vyavascha deshaha. Nadi desha iti asama desha vayam. Anyway, these are some details that he gives. And then he says, Udhyascha iravati cha udhyeravati. With the name of two rivers. Udhyaha cha iravati cha udhyeravati. So these are two rivers which have the two different genders. So Udhyaha is masculine and Iravati is feminine, of course. So Udhyascha Iravati cha Udhyeravati. Of course, in also Udhyeravati, remind yourself that we have to use the sutram, I think it's 1243, right? Which is Rasva Napumsake Pradipadikasya. Rasva Napumsake Pradipadikasya. So make it Rasvaha. Udhyeravati. Udhyera. So 247. Okay, let me, I can take it from here. Udhyascha Iravati cha, and then make it a samahara of that. Udhyeravati. Udhyeravati. Anayoho samaharaha. Udhyascha Iravati cha. Anayoho samaharaha. Samaharaha. So here Udhyeravati. And then, so this is, we are using now 247, which is if you have a Nadivachaka or a Deshavachaka, Bhinnalingam, then only Samahara can be done. So here we have to use Rasvanapumsake Pradipadikasya. So we have used 1, 2, again the same thing, 1, 2, I think it's 40, 47. 1247. So 1247. Okay, 1247. Okay. Then he goes on with the other one. He says, so he says Nyadhyavayavaha. Nyadhyavayavaha Dvandvo Nyadi Ityuchyate. So it's a dvandvo because Panini has said Nadi Deshaha Agramaha. By Nadi he means Nyadhyavayavaha Dvandvaha. Nadi Tyuchyate. So Nadi he means that it's a Dvandva compound, who members of which are rivers. And Desha Vayavascha Desha Tyuchyate. So which has territories or regions, civilizations, whatever, that are the parts of the compound, comes a Deshaha. It says Ganga Shonam. Same thing, two different genders. Ganga Shonam. I think Shonaha probably is masculine. So Ganga cha Shonascha Ganga Shonam. You can check that. Ganga cha Shonascha Ganga Shonam. As long as they're different genders, we are okay. There are different genders we can do. Let's see what the Shona gender is. Ganga cha Shonam. Shonaha. Shonaha. It's masculine name of a river, Shonaha. So Ganga cha Shonascha, Ganga Shonam, Ganga cha Shonascha, Ganga Shonam, Ganga cha Shonascha, Ganga Shonam. So let's go back to 247. Again, different genders. He says Ganga, Ganga Shonam. Then Desha also. Kuravascha Kurukshetrancha. So Kurava has masculine. Kurukshetran neuter. Kurukshetram. So Kurukshetram. Then Kurujangalam. Same thing. This is one is a masculine, one is polymasculine, another is going to be polyneuter. Kurujangalam. Now, Vishishtalinga iti kim? You have to be different genders. Why is that? Ganga cha Yamuna cha Ganga Yamune. Ganga cha Yamuna cha Ganga Yamune. So that this, because it's the same gender, you will go back to Itritra Yoga, Ganga Yamune. And then Nadi Desha iti kim? Kukkuta Mayuryo. It's not, it's a Kukkuta is masculine, Mayuri is feminine. They have Vishishtalingam, but they are not Nadi or Desha. Then, let me see, Kamudi, what all he says that Grama Vajya Nadi Desha Vachinam Bhinna Linganam Samahare Dvandvaha Ekavasyat Udyascha Iravati cha Udhyeravati Ganga Shonascha Ganga Shonam and Kuravascha Kurukshetrancha Kurukshetram Bhinna Linganam itikim Ganga Yamune, same thing. Ganga Yamuna cha Ganga, Bhinna Lingam Nasti, Ganga Yamune, Madrake Kayaha, also going to be the same gender. And Agramaha itikim, but we should not be names of villages. Jambavam Nagaram, Shalukini Gramaha, so Nagaram and Gramaha. It becomes Jambava Shalukinyo. One more time, it says Agrama itikim. So if you have a name of a village in there, then this rule does not apply. Which means that you go back to the Tritra Yogaha. So Jambavam, Nagaram, Shalukini Gramaha, Jambava Shalukinyo. So that is the thing. Okay, this is 247, not a very, very common rule because you have to have names of rivers or names of regions of different gender. So it is there, but not nearly as important as the prior rule. The prior rule is enormous application because jati means everywhere. We have jatis everywhere. Okay, let's look at the next one, 24248. Kshudra. So Kshudra. Kshudra means small, like trivial, small living beings of trivial size. How small is trivial? We should know that, right? What is Kshudra? So Kaumudi says is that Anakulad Kshudra up to the size of a mongoose, up to that size is Kshudra. So Anakulad Kshudra. So Esham Samahare Dvandvaha Ekavatsya Yuka Liksham. So Yuka and Liksha. Can lice. Liksha, how about that in English? Liksha means lice in English. Liksha. 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 So Liksha. So Liksha in knit lice. Egg of a loose. Very small. So these are some bugs. So Yuka and Liksha. Some Yuka Liksham. So when these small, very small, tiny animals or creatures or bugs, in that case, we don't form Itritra Dvandvaha, form Samaharaha. Yuka Liksham. Loosen its egg. Okay, Yuka Liksham. If I give Yuka, I should have given. Give me 1 second. Oh, Yuka, both are okay. Yuka and Yuka, some kind of bug, louse. Okay, so the Sutram says that if you have tiny creatures, tiny means they're taken up to the size of a mongoose. Tiny creatures, in that case, you cannot form a Itaratra Yoga, has to be only Samaha, which makes sense. Only the group is important. We talk about ants or bugs, you don't talk about two individual ants, So it has to be only Samahara, Yuka Liksham. What does Kaumudi say? Esham Samahare Dvandva Ekavasyat Yuka Liksham Anakulat Kshudrajantavaha. Okay, that's one. So again, this is a little bit important rule. Anytime we have these tiny creatures, you have to make Samaharaha. Now comes the next one. Yesham cha virodhaha shashvatikaha. Yesham virodaha shashvatikaha. So those which are always enemies, always opposed to each other, all opposed to each other. So yesham virodaha shashvatikaha. In yesham pragvat means you can only do the samaharaha. And ahi nakulam, the snake and a mongoose, ahi nakulam. In all these cases, keep on noticing how the nipataha, the pur nipataha, ahi has only 2 ach, nakula has 3 ach. So alpashtaram. Not only that, ahi is ajadi adantam. So keep on noticing that in the back of your mind. But right now we're talking about, can we do samahara, or can we do itara yogaha? It says yesham ch virodaha shashvatikaha. They should be always opposed to each other. Naturally, so ahi nakulam. Go vyaghram means that if you have a cow and a tiger, so go vyaghram, same thing. Then kako lukam. So ulukaha is an owl. So kakaha and ulukaha. Again, kaka is only 2 achi goes first, but kakascha, ulukascha, kako lukam, because they have ityadav paratvat. Now comes the complication. What does it say? Paratvat vibhasha vriksha mriga iti praptam chakarena bhadyate. Okay. We looked at this sutra, which we're going to come to a little bit detail, which is vibhasha, vriksha, mriga, trana, dhanya, vyanjana, pashu, ityadi. So now, he gave examples he gave was that ahi nakulam, a snake and a mongoose. Then he gave the example of, this Siddhanta Kaumudi example is so beautiful. You should really study these examples which are given in Kaumudi or Mahabhashyam or Kashika. How much thinking goes into those. Look at this right in the current example, Prakritam, which is he says, he gave 3 examples. Bhattoji gave 3 examples. He gives ahi, ahishcha nakulascha, ahi nakulam, snake and mongoose. And then he gave one more example. He gave actually 2 more. So he says, gauhu cha vyagrascha go vyagram, anayoho samarha go vyagram. Then he gave kakascha ulukascha kako lukam. Now why he gave 3 examples? Because vibhasha coming in 2.4.12, vibhasha vriksha mriga, nakula, mongoose, and then mriga, and then he gave gauscha vyagrascha, that's the pashu, vyagrascha. And then he also gave the kako lukam, kakascha ulukascha, that is the shakuni. Shakuni is a bird, shakuni. So these 3 would have taken vibhasha normally by 2.4.12. But by mentioning about the yesham virodaha shashvatikaha, by putting the cha in there, the saying is that the vibhasha bhadyate. There will be no vibhasha now. You can only make ahi nakulam, can only make go vyagram. You cannot make go vyagrav. Go vyagram only you can make. You cannot make kako lukam. Okay. Present document now. Okay. So the point we're trying to make here is that this yesham virodaha shashvatikaha, yesham virodaha shashvatikaha. So this one, this 249 overrules 2.4.12. So 2.4.9 there is no vibhasha. There's no vibhasha because specific rules. So 2.4.9 and 2.4.9. So 2.4.9 does not admit vibhasha. Does not admit vibhasha. Admit vibhasha of 2.4.12. 2.4.12. One more time. Chakarina bhadyate, because of the mention of cho in this is what Toji says, because of cho in 2.4.9. So these will have this only, so 2.4.9. It says that Ahinakulam govyagram kako lokam iti adav paratvat. Because what happening is that this 2, 4, 12 vibhasha was a parakaryam. So now, because of parakaryam, it should have more say. Vipadishede parakaryam. That should have more say. So that's the term which we use all the time when we have a conflict. We use parankaryam. But so by that maxim, then we would have had this vibhasha prapti. Paratvat vibhasha praptyate. Parantu chakara grahanena vibhasha badhyate. This is yesham to virodha shashvatikaha tesham samahare eva dvandvaha vibhasha nasti. Okay. Then the next one he says is that this one we can skip. Okay, we can skip this one. Shudranam aniravasitanam. Talking about Shudras who have not been expelled. So this is very, this is, in today's day and world, this doesn't apply to us. So this we can skip 2, 4, 10. Shudranam aniravasitanam means Shudras who have not been expelled from the village. So that it doesn't apply. We'll leave that one. Then 2, 4, 11 is interesting one again. It says Gavasha Prabhutini cha. Gavasha Prabhutini cha. So these are ready-made forms now. Ready-made forms Panini gives and they to be taken as it is. Gavasha Prabhutini cha means that they to be taken as it is. No, that those forms are correct as they are. So Gavasha Prabhutini cha Krita ekavad bhavani. So they've already been made ekavad. So Panini always made a samahara dvandva for us, given the final form. Dvandva rupani sadhuni bhavanti. They are to be taken as it is. Nipatyante. So Gavasham, Gava become, I think Avi is like a goat or a ham, so Avi. So Gava become, so these are all forms which Panini gives that is to be taken as they are. There will be no, in fact, let me I'll do the commentary on that also. And we also go back to the book for a second. So Avihi, a sheep, okay, a sheep. So I'm sorry. Let's see. Okay. So Gavasham, Gava become, Gavairakam, Aja become. No, these forms you cannot change them. Only these forms are correct. If you can make any change, he says down here, Gavasha Prabhutishu Yathocharitam Dvandva Vrittam. So these are to be taken exactly as they are. Rupantaretu, if you change it slightly, to Na Ayam Vidir Bhavati. Once if you change it slightly, then this doesn't apply. So Go Ashwam, if you don't make the Gavva Deshaha, Gavashvam, then Go Ashvav. So this is, Pashudanda Vibhasha Eva Bhavati. Because when you had Gavashvam, when you have the, Gaushcha, Ashvashcha, so you can make it Gavashvam, you can make it, or you can say, actually you can make it, Gavashcha, Ashvaha, cha, Gavashvam. So now, let me see. I'm talking about, let me get Indu on the line. So Indu, can you give me a sutram, Indu, where it says this, Gavasham and Goasham. What is the sutram here, Indu, if you're there? Sandhikaryam.
What did you ask again?
What is the Sandhikaryam here?
What did you ask again? I'm sorry.
You see the Gavashvam and Goashvam. Why why are we getting two forms? How about this one? Sarvatra Vibhasha Goho. Sarvatra Vibhasha Goho. Let's look at 61122. What Kashika is saying is that if you change the form slightly, then you don't have to accept these forms. It doesn't mean that the Go Pratipadikam and the Ashra Pratipadikam will always give Gavasham. The form Gavasham stands as it is. So if Go becomes Gava, then become Gavasham, Gavasham. But if you don't get the Gava, then if you get Go Ashram, then you can have two forms, Go Ashram. But the question is Sandhi wise, how do you get two forms? So I think the sutram here is Sarvatra Vibhasha Goho. So 61122. Let's look at that. 61122. Anyway, this is not today's topic, so we'll just look at it briefly. 61122. This is Sandhikaryam, in the Sandhikaryam. sarvatra shandashi vibhashayam cha atiparataha, when at follows, goho ing prakritya bhavati vibhasha. So go agram, and we can give go ashvebhyaha, go ashwan. So prakritya bhavati. But let's look at the next sutra, 123. So achiparataha go spotayanasya acharyasya matena avangadesho bhavati. Avangadesho. So gavagram go agram. This is the one. Avang spotayanasya. Avang spotayanasya. Is that achiparataha? So achiparataha, when ach follows, goho, then spotayanasya acharyasya matena. In the opinion of spotayana acharya, what happens? Avangadesho bhavati. So go plus agram becomes gavagram or gogram, because only spotayana says it should be avangadesha. So you get gavagram, gogram. That's the sutra India is talking about. Is this avang spotayanasya, avang spotayanasya. So what? So 61123. So what? Coming back to our what avang spotayana 61123. Now coming back to what Kashika was saying on the sutram is that these gavashva prabhuti nicha, they are these forms to be taken as they are, as the only correct form, but only for these specific terms. If you change them slightly, then you can, then this rule doesn't apply. So he gives the example. He says, Gavasha prabhutishu yathocharitam dvandva vrittam rupantaretu. Make a slight modification. Rupantaretu na ayam vidir bhavati. So if you make, instead of taking the avangadesha, if you don't do avangadesha, you can go goshvam or goshvau. So you could go back to the vibhasha of the next sutram. So gavashvam is the form. You cannot make gavashvau. You cannot make gavashvau, because when Panini says gavashvam is a ready-made form, you accept it, gavashvam, but that's only for gavaksham. You can make it goashvam, then you can make goashvam, goshvau, goshvam, goshvau, because that was by this avang spotayanasya. But avangadesha is only in the spotayanasya acharyasya matena. We just saw that. So that's an optional rule, because only spotayana says. So go agram, gava agram. So what Kashika is saying is that it's true that gavasham, etc. are ready-made forms. They to be given as they are, like ushtra kharam, ushtra shasam, and all these forms, like ushtra kharam. Now this is saying which is a camel and a donkey, ushtra kharam. Now what would have normally happened if you didn't have this rule? Then the next rule, which is the 2412, the vibhasha rule, would have come in. It is said, because anything which is a pashu has vibhasha. This vibhasha rule is the pivotal rule in this thing. It's like the pivotal rule over here. We're going to come to it next. We'll come to it. And let me finish this one first, okay? So this is not in the book, I think. In our Antoine book, I don't think he has referred to this sutram, the gavasha prabhuti nicha. Because he talks about the rivers of different genders. We talked about, we did that. Small animals, we did that. Mashakashcha, machikashcha. Mashaka, the thing is like flies, and machika also some kind of bug. Machikashcha. So these are mashakashcha, machikashcha. These are, they're going to be mashaka machikam, mashaka machikam, mashaka machikam. Mashaka machikam. So these are some kind of bugs. Let's see, machika. Mashaka is, I think, is a fly. Mashaka machikam. Mashaka machikam. So mashakaha. Mosquito. Okay, mosquito. Mashaka is a mosquito, and machika. Anyway, they are tiny creatures. Machika is a fly. Okay, machika is a fly. Okay, so mashakashcha, machikashcha, mashaka machikam. Because kshudrantavaha. So that one he is referring, the book he's talking about, which is this one, kshudrajantavaha. So kshudrajantavaha. Okay, we did that, and then he's talking about bidalashcha mushikashcha, bidala mushikam, bidalashcha mushikashcha, bidala mushikam. He's talking about the cats and the mice. because they have the Yesham Virodha Shashvatikaha. No vibhasha there. Now we did this one, members of a compound denoting inert substance. And this one we're going to do next coming down. So this is Sutram 2413. So this 2411 and 2412 is not in the book. So 2411 and 2412 is not in the book. So Gavasya Pravruti Nicha is not in the book. And the next one, Vibhasha, which is actually the most important, most critical sutram there, most complicated one. Okay, let's finish this one first. So 2411, 2412, not in the book. Okay, what does Bhattoji say? Yathocharitani sadhoni syahu. So these are to be taken as they are in 2411. This is the Gana of Gavashvam, etc. taken as they are. Dasi dasam ityadi. So dasi and dasam, dasi dasam. I think even Nagesha makes the point. Let me see. So many books today over here. You can find. Okay, let's see what Nagesha says on this one about the Gavasha Prabhuti Nicha. Gavasha Prabhuti Nicha. Shishtalingaha. Gavasham, Gava, Vikam, etc., etc. It says. Okay. Okay. Gavashve Pashudvandu Vibhasha Prapta. So when you have the Gava and so Gavascha, Shvascha, because Pashu is coming in two, for different Vibhasha would have come here. So, but by saying Gavasha Prabhuti Nicha says Ishantis Samanyataha Prapte Niyamaha. This says Tathacha Vartikam Gavasha Prabhuti Shu Yathocharitam Dvandu Vrittamiti Tena Pararupa Adi Pakshe. They should make it Goashvam, Goashvam, Goshwaha. Iti Bhavatityaho. So Goashvam, Goshwaha can be done. We said that only the exact form Gavashvam, only that is fixed. If you make any change to it, then you go back to the other rules. So Dasi Dasam. Dasi Dasam also an example. So in this Gana, you also have the word Dasi Dasam. So now what would that be? Dasi Dasam iti Puman Striya iti Ekasheshe now. See, there's another section. We have not done this in the class so far. It's called the Ekashesha. Ekashesha Prakaranam. Ekashesha Prakaranam. And that I think comes at the Puman Striya. Let's look at 1, 2. So why is the word Dasi Dasam given in this part of Gavasha Prabhuti Nicha? So let's look at 1, 2, 67 and move on to next sutram. This is not, we have not done this one, but we just look at it briefly. It says Puman Striya. Striya Sahavachane Puman Shishyate Stri Nivartate. If you have it's become Ekavad Bhava. So Brahmanascha Mayuricha, no sorry, Stripun Lakshanam Vishesha Bhavati Evakaraha. Indrascha Indrani cha Indra, sorry. I think this online thing has a lot of typos, So let me read it from the book to you. This is 1, 2, 67. Because why is Dasi Dasam given in the Gavasha Prabhuti? That's the topic here. Because what would have happened if Panini had not given that? So 1, 2, 67 is saying that Stri Pum Lakshanashched Eva Visheshabhoti. So Brahmanascha Brahmanicha Brahmanau. Kukkutascha Kukkuticha Kukkutau. So when we have a compound between two members, and the difference is only the gender between them. So Stri Pum Lakshanashched Eva Visheshabhavati. So if you have a compound between a man and a woman, and the only difference is their gender. So Brahmanascha Brahmanicha Brahmanau becomes only Brahmanau. So then Kukkutascha Kukkuticha Kukkutau, and so on. So when you have, Dasi and Dasa, it should be only Dasa should remain behind. But it doesn't. It becomes Dasi Dasam. So instead of 1 to 67 applying, we should have only left there. Only Dasa should remain behind, but it doesn't happen because of the Nipatanartha. So all these Nipatanas are done, they have some reason why Nipatana is done by Panini. So why Nipatana is done by Panini is a reason for that. So anyway, Nagesha gives one of the reasons why Dasi Dasam, why it would have been a problem had this Nipatanam had not been done. So you would have had what he says is that ekashesha na bhavati, ekashesha na bhavati. So we'll not get only dasa remaining and dasi going away. Anyway, so one more time, 1, 2, 4, 11 is not in the book. It gives you ready-made forms where only these specific forms are acceptable for when these two are compounded. So when you compound dasi and dasa, you only get dasi, dasam. You don't get any other form. When you form, when you form go and ashwa, and when you do the avangadesha, you get only gavaksham. No, I'm sorry, gavashvam, and no other form. So this is an ushtrakharam. So when you get ustra and when a camel and a donkey, only ushtrakharam. There's no other form. So this is now a gana which is to be taken as it is. Now comes the complicated one, and we'll go slowly one step by step, and that pretty much will complete the lesson for the most part, is the vibhasha. We refer to it already today. Vriksha, mruga, trina, dhanya, vyanjana, pashu, shakuni. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of them. And then 3 forms are given. Ashwa, vadava, purva, uttarana, adarottara. So one more time. There are 7 classes here. A class of trees, big trees, a class of like animals, mriga, like deer, etc., deer, and then trina. So these are deer and these are grass, trina. Then dhanya is grains. Vyanjana means like your side condiments, when you eat condiments. Then pashu, wild beasts, and shakuni, and birds. Now these are to be taken vibhasha. Now why is this sutram necessary? We talked at the beginning of the class, this entire section is siddhe sati niyamartham. It's because we already have the vibhasha by charthe dvandvaha. We already know that a dvandva can go in one or the other. Let's follow the Kaumudi now and try to pay attention and see if you can grasp this, okay? When we read the sutram, the Vyakhya by Bhattoji Dikshita in Kaumudi, what does he say? Vrikshadinam saptanam dvandvaha. So vrikshadinam saptanam. So vriksha mrigatrana dhanya vyanjana pashu shakuni iti saptanam dvandvaha. Ashva vadava ityadi dvandvatrayam. Dvandvatrayam. So you have ashva vadavam, so horse and a mare. Vadava is a mare. So horse, ashva vadavam, purva para, so prior and later. Adharottara means low, and other is low and high. Adharottaranam. So these are the three. So you have 7 classes and we have 3 specific dvandvas. Ashva vadava ityadi dvandvatrayam cha pragvadva means becomes samahare ekavadva. Now, he says vrikshadau vishesh, the first vartikam now. Vrikshadau visheshanam eva grahanam. We have to use names of specific trees. If we just use vriksha as a generic term, then this will not apply. So example he gives is that plakshanyagrodham, plakshanyagrodhaha. So plakshascha nyagrodhascha plakshanyagrodham. So these are the names of trees, classes of trees. Then it has to be, but you have to name specific class of trees. Can I use the word vriksha in there? Specific class of trees. Then he gives 2 names of 2 deer now. Zuru Prushatam. Zuru Prushatam is a class. These 2 names of deer. Zuru is a class of is a kind of deer. Prushata, I think like spotted deer, I think it is. So Ruru Prushatam. Then Ruru Prusataha. You can also have, because this is vibhasha. Okay. So bear with me for time. Just see what examples he gives first, and then you give the Vyakhyana also. Then Kushakasham, Kushakashaha. These are kinds of grass, truna. Then he gives Vrihi Yavam and Vrihi Yavaha. So these are meaning that this is, I think, rice and barley. So Vrihi Yavaha. Then Dadigritam. So this was the Vyanjanam, okay? Sorry, Dhanya. So the Vrihi Yava is Dhanya. Vrihi Yavam, Vrihi Yavaha. Now Vyanjanam, talking about Dadigritam, Dadigrate. So Dadicha Gritancha Dadigritam Atva Dadigrate. So curds and ghee will become Dadigritam, Dadigrate. Then Go Mahisham. with a cow and a buffalo. Go mahisham, go mahishaha. Then last one, shakuni, is a bird. So it means shukabakam. Shukabakam means it is a parrot and I think a crane. So shukabakam, shukabakaha. Then the last three he gives, ashwavadavam, ashwavadavau. Vadavau, there are only two of them now. Ashwavadavam, ashwavadavau. And then he gives, but notice something strange going on here now. Because ashwavadava, vadava was female. Vadava. But now he gives ashwavadavau. We'll come to that in a second. But how come ashwascha vadavacha should become ashwavadave? Because this is the second one is a, let me tell you right now what's going on here. Is this sutram paraval lingam dvanva tatpurushayoho. Paraval lingam dvanva tatpurushayoho. Dvandva compound, tatpurusha compound. The lingam of the entire compound is paravat as the second member. But puravad ashwavadavau. Panini puts a specific rule for ashwavadava. Is the ashwascha vadavacha ashwavadavau. So because the top pratyaya, which is Srilinga, will go out, will become like Rama. So in Ashwa and Vadava, when you make the compound, it takes the lingam of the Purvavat of Ashwa. Ashwa. So in Vadava, we had the Sri pratyaya top coming in there. You take it out, then we get Ashwa Vadavau. So this is an example of a rare example where the Paraval lingam, normally a lingam of a Dvandva and Tatpurusha compound, is Paravat, like his second member, the Uttarapadam. But Puravad Ashwavadavau is a specific sutram just for the Ashwavadavau, this one compound, where Panini says you take the lingam of the Ashwa and not the Vadava. Okay, let's go back to our main thing here. So let's continue. It says, okay, Ashwavadavam, Ashwavadavau. Then Purvaparam, Purvapare. So Purvancha, Aparancha, Purvaparam, Athva Purvapare. Remember, you're talking about Vivasha now. So all these are Vivasha. Okay. The next thing it says, Adharottaram, Adharottare. Okay, now before going to why we need this sutram, he gives a Vartikam now, which is Phalasenanga, Vanaspati, Mruga, Shakuni, Kshudra Jantu, Dhanya Trunanam, Bahu Prakritir Eva Dvandvaha, Ekavad iti Vachyam. I'm sorry, I want to type this in the document, but let me type this one. It says the Phala, Senanga. So all these is an important Vartikam. What is Vartikam is saying is that when you are talking about all these Samahara, they're only when you have many. In fact, I hope I didn't make any mistake in the class today, because when you're referring to these, the Vigraha Vakyam, there should be many, not one and one. If you make one and one in these items, you cannot make a Samaharaha. So let's look at this list now. It is a Vartikam on that 2412 in the Siddhanta Kaumudi. It says Phala. So when you're talking about fruits, you can talk of classes of fruits, but there should be many of them, not one and one. So it says Badarani cha, Amalakani cha, Badaramalakam. We already saw Sutam Jatira Praninam. These are Badara berries and these Amalakas. These are two kind of fruits, kind of berries. So they will form Jatira Praninam. They'll become Samahare. But Badara Amalake, if you're talking about one berry and one Amalaka, then you will not get Samahara. So this sutram which you saw before, which is the very important sutram Jatira Praninam, that was saying that if you have a generic term of a physical substance, then it will go only Samahare. But now the condition comes that if you're talking about fruits, generic fruits, that is fine. It has to be only the Bahu Prakritihi. Prakritihi means that the items in the compound have to be many. So one is Phala. Same is Senanga. Senanga also same thing. So members of an army, we saw by 242 that they are going to become the Samahara Dvandvaha, but only if there are many. If you have only one chariot rider and one horse rider, it will not become Samahara. So he says Ratika Ashvarohau. So Ratika Ashvarohascha, Ratika Ashvarohau. So So if you go back to what we did here, is this one, when we formed the Ratikashcha Ashwarohashcha, we made it plural, because otherwise the Vartikam will spoil it. So because this Sutram as it stands, this Sutram 242 only says Dvandvascha Prani Turya Senanganam. Didn't say whether it's to be, many of them or few of them, but the Vartikam specifies that the Senangani, it has to be Bahuprakritihi. So Ratikashcha Ashwarohashcha Esham Samaharaha. So that's the second class, which has to be Bahuprakritihi. So Senanga, the second one. Then comes Shakuni, same thing with birds. So Shakuni also same thing. Let's see what example Bhattoji gives. He gives that Plakshanyagrodhau, sorry, I missed one. Vanaspati Mruga Shakuni, So Vanaspati is in between. So Vanaspati means if you're talking about, large trees. So he says Plakshanyagrodhau. You're talking one Plaksha tree, one Nyagrodha tree, Plakshascha Nyagrodhashcha Plakshanyagrodhau. There will not be any Samahara. So Vanaspati. Then Mruga, same thing Mruga. Talking about one deer, one Ruru, and one Pushata. It will not become Ruru Pushatam. It will not take that. It will be only, there's no Samahara. So Mruga. Then Shakuni, same thing. Talking about one, one crow and one somebody else. It will not be like that also. So he gives, the example was given back to us was the, Kakashcha, Bakashcha, we should have many of them. So Mruga, Shakuni, and Kshudrajantu. Also we are talking about the bugs. There should be many bugs. If you have only one bug, then you cannot make the Samahara. I mean, this kind of makes sense. So Kshudrajantu. So this is not in the this one the Siddhantakam. Kshudrajantu. Second. Then Dhanya Trunanam. Dhanya also same thing, which you have grains. This is Vrihayascha, Yavashcha. Right? Then you can make it like that. But if you have only one and one, so Vrihi Yavaha. So you can, we can Vrihi Yavam. It has to be many of them. So Dhanya. And then Trunanam, same thing, grass. Grass also, Trunanam. And finally, Bahu Prakritir Eva Dvandvaha Ekavad. So Bahu Prakritihi, Bahu Prakritir Eva Dvandvaha, Ekavad. Not otherwise. One more time. This is what Vartikam says, that if you're talking about fruits, talking about members of an army, talking about large trees, Vanaspati, talking about deer, talking about birds, or about tiny creatures, talking about grains, and of kinds of grass, then they have to be plural. Otherwise, you cannot make Samahara with these. When we give examples, as I said, I hope I didn't make any mistakes in the class, but if I did, correct them. These have to be plural. You cannot make them one and one. So we say Kasha Kashau. Kasha and Kasha. Remember the example we saw way back? Kasha, in last class I think we saw it. Kasha Kashau. Now Kasha and Kasha are, these kinds of grass. So they will be, when you do that, Kasha Kashau, this will, because one and one, that's it. You cannot form Samahara with that. So even though it might be, maybe a class of items, doesn't matter. They will not form Samahara. This can only be in the plural. Okay, now comes the last part of today's class, which is that he says that, okay, now Vibhasha Vriksha iti sutre ye apraninaha, last 5 minutes, okay, pay attention if you can, is the, why do we need this sutra? Because we already have seen many times today that we already have the Chatya Dandvaha Samahare Athva Itarata Yoge. Then how would you justify this? This is the reasoning, okay? The reasoning is the following, is that Vibhasha Vriksha Ityadi Sutre, in this sutram, in this long sutram over here, in this sutram, Ye apraninaha, which are not pranis, okay? Tesham grahanam jatira praninam iti nitye prapte vikalpanartham. So these words like vriksha, trina, dhanya, vyanjana. See these which we had 7 of them. We had vriksha, mruga, trina, dhanya, vyanjana, pashu. Out of which mruga, pashu and shakuni are pranis. They are living beings. Remaining 4, which is vriksha, trina, dhanya, vyanjana. They were taken nityam samaharaha. By what sutram? 246 jatira praninam. But they are put here now, you vikalpaha. So when you had, lakshascha nigrodhascha, then you should have had nitya samaharaha, samahara eva. Why? Jatira pranina. But now by putting vriksha over here, Panini says it can be vikalpe now. So we can get 2 forms, which is plakshanyagrodham, plakshanyagrodhaha. So one more time. These 4, vriksha, trina, dhanya, vyanjana. So they would have normally taken samahara only by 2, 4, 6. Now they take vibhasha. So that explains why we have this vibhasha with vriksha and trina and dhanya and vyanjana. So let's continue. Then he says, pashugrahanam hastyashvadishu senangatvat nitye prap. We already saw that pashu, if you have hasti, ashwa, etc., which can be parts of an army, they would have taken nityam samahare eva because of the senanganam. But now we're putting pashu over here. Pani says, wait a minute, even if they are parts of an army, then if it's pashu, it can be vibhasha only. Vibhasha only. Okay, so that's the second reason. So we account for pashu also. We account for 5 of them so far. So we got vriksha, we got trina, dhanya, vyanjana, pashu. How about mruga and shakuni? Oh, what about them? He says, mruganam mrugaireva, shakuninam staireva uvetra dvandvaha. So mruganam mrugaireva. So with mruga only can form. This is very complicated, I know, but I'm sorry, but there's no other way around it. We have to go through all these nitty-gritties. That's Vyakaranam. This is Vyakaranam for you. So mruganam mrugaireva. So only deer with deer can form. If it's not deer with something else, then you can have to go to itaratara yoga only. So mruganam mrugaireva. So mruganam mrugaireva. Shakuninam taireva uvetra dandvaha. Anyaistu saha itaratara yoga eva. It is niyamartham mruga shakuni grahanam. One more time. This mruga and shakuni. Why do we need those? Why do we need deer and birds? It means that they will form vibhasha with deer only and birds with birds only. If they are mixed up, then we have to go back to itaratara yogaha. And then the last thing he talks about is purva, apara, adharottara. What about these now? Same thing. If only purva, apara, only when purva, aparam, apurva, apare, only when purva is within this combination. In fact, I was looking at just before the class, looking at the Bala Manorama, and there he specifies. Give me a second. Bala Manorama, he says that purva, apara. With Bhattu, he only says evam eva. In the same way, purva, apara, purva, aparam, adharottaram, iti atrapi. Same thing over here. So it says evam. Purva shabdasya apara shabde naiva. Only with purva apara only. Adhara shabdasya uttara shabde naiva. Ubhayatra itaratara yoge samaharish dvandvaha. It will go both ways. But anjina tu saha. Purvottarau. If you take purva and uttara, combine this with this, then no. Then you'll have itaratara yoga only. So basically these forms, purva apara, only this will be samahara optionally. Then adharottara also will be samahara only optionally. If pura combined with this uttara over here, then it will be only itaratara yoga. So that is why it's put in this sutram, that only these forms, niyamartham. The whole thing of this class is niyamartham. So only in these specific forms, niyamartham. If I look at the, I think even the, I know time's running out, but this is the last sutram for today. Let's see what Nagesha says. Evam eva. Evam means he's talking about the purvapara, purvaparam, adharottaram ityapi. Evam eva. Purvapara shabdayoho, adharottarayoho parasparam samasaha eva. Ekavatvam. Tachava. That's also vibhasha. So purva param, purva pare, adharottaram, adharottare vibhasha. Anyaihi tu itaratara yoga eva ityartaha. If you combine it with something else, then only itaratara yoga. So now last one is ashravadava. What is going on over there? Ashravadava grahanam tu pakshe napumsakatvartham anyatha paratvat puravad ashravadavau iti syat. Because the parakaryam here is, I mentioned to you, paraval lingam tatpurushayoho, then puravad ashravadavau. If we didn't have this sutram, then we would have had only the, we could have only taken the pullingam only, because we have sanapumsakam making a samahara dvandvaha as neuter. But then Pani specifically says, puravad ashravadavav. If we did not have this form ashravadavam in this sutram, then, even though this is a pashu, we could have formed the samahara dvandva optionally, that is fine. But then the thing is that, we may have, that may have been possible. But the thing is, ashravadavam, we have to make it into neuter also. So to keep the neuter optionally, then we can, so we can make it ashravadavam. So now that explains whole sutram. Vriksha, mriga, trina, dhanya, vyanjana, pashu, shakunyascha vadava, purva, paradhottaranam. So these are the vriksha, trina, dhanya, vyanjana. So they are jati vachakas. They are nityam, they would have had samahara. This puts optionally. Then the mriga is for niyamartham. So mrigana, mrigaireva. Mriga and mriga only will take samahara. Otherwise they could go back to itaritara yogaha. So, and the pashu, because hastya shwadini, when they become part of a sena, they will become nityam, they have samahara. This is becoming niyamartham. They can become vivasha now. And then shakuni, same thing. Shakuni will shakuni only, not otherwise. Asha, whatever would have been normally only been masculine because of the parakaryam of puravad ashravadavav. But now it's becoming vivasha, ashravadavam also. And purva param, adharottaram, the same thing, niyamartham. Only in these combinations we can have vibhasha. Vibhasha, we can have the samaharaha. Otherwise, it is going to be itaratara yogaha. I think we're out of time. Okay, we are actually doing these. Okay, let me mention these two. We'll continue next time. Okay, let me just mention these two. Vipratishiddham cha anadhikarana-vachi. Something which are opposites, plural opposites. As long as it doesn't talk about, again, physical items which are opposite, like shitoshnam. Shitancha, ushnancha, shitoshnam. Then, or shitoshne, optionality. Now, but if it talks about, shitoshne udake, talking about water which is hot and cold, then you have to make only itaratara dvandva. This is also a niyamartham. It's also a niyamartham, which is that if you vipratishiddham like shitoshnam, then it has to be only samahara can be formed, as long as it's not talking about the adhikaranam, the substance which is hot or cold. So this is also niyamartham. Because why do you vibhasha again here? Because shitoshnam and shitoshne can be formed optionally only when it is about the quality of hot and cold. Talking about hot and cold water, shitoshne udake, itaratara yogaha eva. No samahara over there. Niyamartham. We'll do it next time. And finally this one says that these cannot be samahara. Dadipayadini. These cannot be samahara. So by the prior rules, samahara praptaha. Nishidyate. So these can only be itaratara yoga. So this 2, 4, 14, we're going to be itaratara yoga. So we'll continue next time. It took a long time today. The book we have basically finished. We have finished the book, but these are not in the book. So in the book he talks only about these. The last one talks about the words denoting opposites. And that's the last sutram, 2, 4, 13. So sukham cha dukkham cha sukha dukkham sukha dukkhe shitoshnam shitoshne. The book is finished. But I'd like to just go over this one more time next time, these last two, 2, 4, 13, 14, maybe a little bit 12 again also, a bit late in the class. And then for next time, you can also look at these few rules down here, which is 54106, 547. Look at 2429, 8268, 69 for next time. And then also 6325, 26, 27, and again 5, 4, 77, 8, 3, 82, and 2, 2, 31. We already saw this one. Jayapati, we already saw. Jampati, Dampati, we already did. Okay. So Ramo Rajamanis Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bhirata Nishachara Chamu Ramaya Tasmai Namaha Raman Nasti Paranam Parataram Ramascha Dasosmyaham Rame Chitsale Sada Bhautame Bhaurama Muddhara Rama Rameti Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahastanama Tattvaryam Rama Nama Varanane Shri Rama Nama Varanana